um, just sort of about how they came to be in the position that they're in right now, getting that first head professional position, as well as kind of what their experience has been like over the first season or two of being in that head professional position. So we have Eric Keeler here from the Education Committee, who helped kind of organize and put this together. He'll be acting as one of our panelists as well, Will Young, and then Jake Van Fleet as well. So thank you all for your willingness to be with us today and discuss kind of your path and some insights that you've learned. So got a number of questions that we'll just start kind of diving into with this panel. As I ask each question, we'd just love to hear from each of the three of you on it. And then I would also just mention to anybody in the audience, if you do have additional questions for any of these panelists, please just go ahead and type them into the chat, and we'll make sure to ask those throughout the course of our conversation here today. So let's first, before we even get into some of the questions that we have coming in here, let's just have each of you guys maybe introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself, and kind of your I guess your work experience to date, and a little bit about you and your facility that you're at. Eric, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. First, thanks for having me. These seminars have been awesome so far this winter, so excited to be a part of it. Eric Keeler, I'm finishing up, I guess starting my second season here at North Shore in Mequon. Came here from Oklahoma, where I spent 2 years. And then prior to that, I was kind of all over the East Coast, Philadelphia, New York, Massachusetts, North Carolina. So kind of well-traveled as far west as, the South Central, and then happy to call this place home for a while, hopefully.
All right. Welcome to the section. Great to have you. Thank you. Will, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Will Young. I'm elected to membership in 2016. I spent 7 years in Orlando, Florida at a resort. Came up here and I actually worked at North Shore Country Club before Eric was there for 3 years. And then this will be my third season at Hartford Golf Club. So I've seen resort, I've seen private, and now semi-private. So I'm looking forward to another good year.
All right. Outstanding. What season did you say you're in?
Second. This is my third season.
Third season. Okay, perfect. All right. And then, all right, Jake, could you introduce yourself as well?
Absolutely. First off, I'm really excited to get to be here. I'm a big fan of the seminar series, so I'm pumped to get to be talking about it. But my name is Jake. I'm the head golf professional at Janesville Country Club in Janesville, Wisconsin. Just finished my first season. I spent the last 3. I've never been out of our section. So I've worked at Sheniko Country Club. I worked at Westmore Country Club, and I started in the Milwaukee County Parks. So very local guy. I don't have any cool out-of-state stories to tell right now.
All right. Well, thanks, Jake. Appreciate that. Well, let's jump into some questions for the panel here and hear from you guys a little bit on your experience. So you've all, within the last year or a few years, gotten a head professional position. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the interview and hiring process that you experienced for that position, and kind of how you prepared for that and navigated that process. Go ahead and jump in, whoever is ready.
I'll go. So interviewing for Janesville Country Club, it was not a part of the PGA of America search or any search firm. They did it internally. And it was a little more tedious, I would say, than some of the other interview processes that I had been through. Not necessarily in like the written tests that they make you take, but I started with an application and a portfolio. I had a phone call that lasted maybe an hour or so. That led to a Zoom interview with our board, and then that led to 2 more in-person interviews. So during those in-person interviews, one was almost a meet and greet, but I had a portfolio and maybe an hour or so presentation. talking about things that I've done, things that I plan to do, um, stuff about my family, stuff like that. And it lasted about an hour in front of our board. That was my final interview for that job.
Oh, Danny, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Anything you felt like you did in that process, Jake, that kind of separated you from maybe other candidates or might have put you over the top? Or
I was fortunate enough to work for two people that had been through big interview processes before, so I was really confident in what my portfolio looked like, what was in it, how I presented, because I had seen so many different examples of people that had won jobs and had put together nice portfolios and presentations.
you had some good mentoring going
Yeah.
into it, sounds like. Okay, excellent. Will, how about yourself? Your
So
interview
when I
process.
interviewed for this position, I was lucky enough that 2 years prior to the interview, I had actually moved into Hartford. So I had the bonus of being 5 minutes from work, and the board really enjoyed that bonus. Um, so the process that I went through, the first one was a video conference with about 3 of the board members. We have 7 total. The second, then the in-person interview was in front of, I think we were missing 1 board member, so 6 board members. And then I came back and met with the president, vice president, and one of the past head professionals and did about a 30-minute presentation in order to get the position. Something that I kind of did when I knew I was going to have like the half an hour presentation or something. I did a lot of research on the struggles that Hartford was having and what they needed to do to improve. So I answered a lot of their questions that they had before they were even able to ask them. They said they were pretty impressed with that aspect of it, that I did my due diligence on the course before. I tried to learn as much as I can even before I got the job.
Okay. We just had a question in the chat, which maybe you just answered. What's one of the things that you think helped you most to get the position? So would you say it's kind of that sort of that homework and that groundwork that you did?
That and raising a family, not wanting to move. Like obviously, when I have a 3-year-old, so when we moved and took this position, we're not going to be jumping around a lot, so that was a plus. And obviously, being 5
Mhm.
minutes from the clubhouse, if anything happens, that was a major plus as well.
Okay. Yeah. It's kind of all those selling points, making
Yeah.
your employer know that you're going to be stable. You're not
Right.
going anywhere. You're close by. All that. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. How about Eric? Any insights on your interview process?
Yeah, I went through the whole PGA deal. The club had hired the PGA of America to run the search, and I kind of heard about the job a little bit later. So it turned out we had a connection through a member down in Oklahoma City who knew one of the members here, had heard about the search, reached out, and that eventually made its way up to myself and Carrie in Tulsa. And I had a phone conversation with that member first to see, kind of gauge an interest in both myself and the club. And then I went through the whole deal. The one-way spark interview, which if anyone's done, it's a little odd just to be talking to no one. And I think in that portion, you really have to find a way to show emotion and interest in, that you want the position. From there, that led to a Zoom interview lasted about an hour and 45 minutes with the whole committee, just kind of rapid fire questions, and then flew up here and met with the committee. That was a full day, met with all the department heads, kind of conversations with them, interviews back and forth, met with the staff, and then the search committee, executive board, and dinner with the committee. And they had invited my wife up and everything, so got to see the city. It was actually relatively quick in comparison to a lot of the searches I've been in the past. I think from the Zoom call to offer and acceptance, it was like 4 or 5 days. So they moved relatively quickly. But I think in preparation, I dotted the I's and crossed the T's, made sure I knew about the club, the membership, the area, things like that. But once I got in the room, I had a presentation, but it was really about having a conversation and not really just reciting. Everyone can recite standard operating procedures or things like that, but we're interviewing the club just as much as they're interviewing us. So making sure it was the right fit, making sure they knew who I was as a person and as a professional, and then sharing my vision, kind of like how a head coach goes into a university or an NFL team and shows their kind of their direction they want to do. So making sure that they saw who I was as a person and not just kind of reciting maybe what they wanted to hear.
Yeah. And anything, same question I just asked Will, I'll ask. I mean, any one thing that you feel like, helped you get the position the most? Or you kind of mentioned a number of things, but yeah, anything you'd highlight as the top reason?
Yeah, I think just the personal touch. You have all these questions at the end where an opportunity for yourself to ask the committee questions in the Zoom call, and a lot of people, you kind of hear the same questions. I always just kind of ask, why is the club special to you? Why did you want to be a part of the search? What stake do you have in it? And the committee was, kind of surprised by that question. Took a lot of them a few minutes to put it together, but again, you're trying to show that I understand this is their club. They're all looking for specific things, and we're trying to meet those needs. So right off the bat, having a service first kind of mindset. And then I'm a big handwritten notes guy. So, thank you letters, everything after every part of the process, just to show I'm interested and ask for the job. A lot of people go into interviews and they give all the right answers, but they never come out and say, hey, I want to be your head golf professional, or I want to be your director of golf. I think that goes a long way.
Absolutely. Great stuff. Thank you. Next question for you guys is, so we just talked about the interview process a little bit. Now you get the job. Now you've got however X amount of time, might have been a few weeks, might have been a few months until you start. What did you do to prepare yourself for the position once you knew you had it before your start date? So this is a two-part question. What did you do kind of to prepare? And then what were your priorities in the first 30 days or so on the job to kind of get acclimated? Will, you want to go first on this one?
Yeah, sure. So my hiring process was kind of a longer one. The job was posted in December. I ended up accepting it in like the first week of February, and then I didn't start until the 1st of March. So I had quite a long time leading up to it. And I was lucky that my boss at the time, sometimes your head pro is like, well, you have another job, like you should leave. He was nice enough to allow me to continue working. So I did start to kind of split the time between the two, and some of my off days or my off time, because I was so close, I took the extra time to go to the club and meet the assistant and the staff that was here at the time to kind of start to get a lay of the land and see how what they liked about it. When I took the position, one of the first things I did was I sat down and I took each of the current employees to lunch separately. I didn't want to do it all as a group because I wanted them to feel comfortable. It was tough because it was like one of those, is it going to be intimidating or is it going to be comfortable? I wanted them to be able to voice their opinion, even if it was about other employees that we had at the time, without feeling like they were stepping on somebody's toes. That helped me learn a lot about what was going on with the membership and how things were run and what we needed to change. And then following that directly was literally kind of a house cleaning. A lot of stuff was, policies weren't the way that I necessarily liked it. Obviously, when you make these changes, you have to voice directly with the board and make sure they're on board with the same vision. And then just getting things organized. Everybody's mind and work process is a little different. So reorganizing my office and the pro shop the way that I wanted things to be run. It was very important to me that I knew where everything was, especially because I didn't have a director of golf. I just have the board above me. So everybody's going to come to me. it was very important for me to know if I didn't know the answer where I was going to find it quickly.
Mhm.
So organization was a huge thing for
Yeah.
me as soon as I got in,
Right. Definitely.
especially because I was switching clubs. If you move up in a club, it's a little different. You kind of already know the lay of the land a little bit. But if you're
Mhm.
switching to a different club, it's a quick learning process.
Okay. Yep, definitely. Thank you. How about you, Eric? Preparing for the position after you were hired and focus points in the first 30 days?
Yeah, similar to Will, trying to get procedures in place. I had about 30 days. I think I accepted in January 12th, and then my first day was February 15th. And I kept working right up at the other club right up until I think February 13th. I'm not much for taking a lot of time off. So, but again, trying to juggle two jobs at the time, and Carrie was great about understanding, trying to get this one off the ground. So, like everything, trying to get the operation in the right, direction, everything kind of in place. But one of the bigger things I did was I started reaching out to people, people I looked up to, connections throughout the industry, because I knew that jump from being an assistant where, you do everything, you're kind of the guy lining up under center, and then you're going to go to the sideline and hold a clipboard and make sure you're calling the right plays and making sure the right people are in the right place at the right time. And I've been fortunate to work at a number of places that allow you to do that, but certainly not on the magnitude when, the buck stops with you. So making sure, I had a strong network of people to call on. Jake and I talked about this over this past year when I moved up here, but, I was fortunate being in Tulsa. I'm not too far from Dallas, and Carrie's good friends with Cameron Doan. So, he's one of the guys I jumped in the car, drove down to Dallas, and spent the day with him. Because, for me, you talk about leadership, and we had the Straws Ball panel yesterday, and the first guy that comes to mind is Sarge down at Preston Trail. But also just, all the things that are necessary: leadership, organization, reaching out to some of the guys I knew back in Philadelphia and all over the country who excelled in those certain spots, just picking their brain and kind of preparing for that kind of shift in what the roles were.
Mhm. Very good. Thank you. And Jake, any insights from you on preparing and then your first 30 days?
Sure. So I had about 2 weeks from the time that I accepted the position to the time that I started. So it was like January 3rd, and then January 17th I started. I worked at Shaniqua until January 13th. But I mean, we was mostly just playing on the simulator with those guys. So it was a good 2 weeks. But I, like Eric, I spent a lot of time actually kind of that winter prior to even getting the job. I had been spending a lot of time with guys in our section, out of our section, asking kind of those questions. And so when I got the job, it was kind of like, all right, I just happened to have been talking to these guys about this stuff. When I got here, some things that my general manager did for me that really helped was I had like kind of interviews with different members. I probably had 3 or 4 a week for the first 2 months of me being here. That was really helpful. I got to know people on an individual one-on-one level, maybe spend an hour with them, and it was have lunch and all that stuff. That was great. I took a lot of the returning backroom kids. I'd try and get like 2 or 3 of them and take them to lunch so I could kind of talk about things with them. I had a new team, so I had to go out and hire. That was a tough part of it. I can get into that in a little bit, but I had a lot of cleaning to do. It was pretty messy when I got here, and we rearranged and cleaned and painted and did a lot of stuff. And then the policies and procedures is so important. And I kind of took a look at our tournament schedule and how we do things, and tried to get to know the tournament schedule as best as possible. I thought it was really important that somebody called, I'd be able to, fully explain what each thing is. So I spent a lot of time kind of head in the computer for the first month or so, just figuring out what did I just walk into.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. so kind of related to getting started, guys, one question we had in the chat was, how did you overcome the kind of the new kid on the block stigma, and sort of, especially if maybe you followed somebody who had been there for a longer period of time? Kind of what do you do to build rapport? Because you all came from, right, from, outside the organization coming in. Sometimes people are an assistant and work their way up, and they kind of already have that built-in rapport, but all three of you came in pretty new to the facility. So if anyone has thoughts on that, go ahead.
I just tried to be seen as much as possible. So it's like, I think it's really easy for all of us to sit behind the computer all day, and I just tried to get to know as many people as possible. So I made a point to around lunchtime go walk the lunchroom or walk the range or hang out in the office when I could, so that people got to know me. I think sometimes I come off like mean or whatever, but so I tried to come off really warm and bubbly to people.
Mhm,
But I think it's that FaceTime is extremely important. It's,
mhm.
there's times to do computer work, and then there's times to go shake some hands and kiss some babies.
Right. Absolutely. So kind of getting that visibility, get people comfortable with you. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. Will or Eric, any thoughts?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of, I didn't want to shake things up too much. If it wasn't broke, don't fix it. You want to have the people that are there, both guest members and your employees, kind of feel like it's business as usual. You don't want to come in and change everything right away, because then you kind of start to seem like the bad guy and kind of ruffle a lot of feathers. So if things are working, just keep doing the way they're doing. If you see something that is really a problem and you need to address it, then address it with your staff or the members. But you don't need to come and flip the whole business upside down right away.
Mm-hmm. Good. Eric, anything
Yeah,
else? Yeah.
all the above, right? Those two guys basically hit it on the head. Visibility, big time, and not just with the members, but with the rest of the staff too. Because I walked into a great spot. There wasn't a ton to change, but you always want to try to create a really positive culture, and the culture starts with the staff, from general manager to department heads, all the way down to bagger employees. So I spent a lot of time getting to know those that worked at the club, because the same time the member walks in, I'm going to introduce myself, and there's people who have been here a long time that the members trust, and they're going to ultimately at some point pull someone aside and be like, hey, how's the new guy working out, right? So just making sure we're came in and really wanted to make a positive impact, and again, just a positive culture, and be visible, be seen, and be available to the members and the staff.
Absolutely. Okay. So now getting in and kind of thinking about that first year a little bit more beyond your first 30 days, kind of, thinking about the season. Well, got a couple of questions specifically on how that went for you guys, but one question that came from our chat related to that is sort of following your hire, and you've got your search committee or the people that were involved in making that decision to hire you. Did you feel any sort of like loyalty to them? And, if so, how did you navigate potentially a challenging situation with someone from that committee? Did you have any situations where maybe they tried to bend the rules and, they were the person who hired you and you're kind of put in that tough spot? Any of you have anything like that happen?
I definitely had an ally. There's one person that specifically stood out, that was, it called me a couple times during the interview process, and made a point to let me know where I stood. Whether or not that's right or wrong, I'm not sure. It's probably not. But I didn't. He kind of understood his place, and that he doesn't get preferential treatment or anything like that. And I think that I also did a good job kind of setting that tone and making sure that he knew that I wasn't going to bend over more than I would for anybody else. Just
right. Good. You're going to bring professionalism, definitely.
Yeah, I think having that consistency between all members, regardless if it's your club president or the guy who joined yesterday. And I with the committee that hired me, I relied on them a lot, and I try to keep them in the loop because they're the ones that set the agenda for who they were going to bring in. Obviously with input from the rest of the membership, but they're ultimately the ones making that decision. So, I would always not necessarily like run it past everything past them, but definitely check in and make sure that I was kind of checking all the boxes that they were looking for throughout the process. And, that kept them informed as to what was going on within the operation. And also, any issues or things that are, came up, they were aware of and able to understand and almost provide a little bit of insight into maybe like, okay, if that's going on, I definitely don't want to be the person asking for special treatment or trying to get away with something. So definitely just consistency and keeping people in the loop.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as far as the loyalty with the search committee and things like that, one thing that I've done, I'm lucky that my president and vice president are very easy to get a hold of by phone or they're usually at the club. So if I am addressing something, usually with the members, I'm not too worried about it. But if it's another board member, I'll kind of just send a text or give a call to the vice president or the president, just be like, hey, this board member's doing this. This is my plan of action. Just so not necessarily seeking their approval, but just keeping them in the loop so that if that board member tries to go to the president and say, hey, he acted wrong, there's at least some sort of paper trail or evidence that like I was trying to do the right thing.
Okay. Let's jump into kind of some of the skills that were most necessary for you to be successful in that first season or two. What skills were most beneficial to you, and kind of looking at this in the lens of maybe there's some assistant professionals out there, people who are trying to work toward that first head professional position. What are the skills you would recommend they make sure they hone so that they're ready for that head professional job?
I think biggest thing for me is organization. Just like Eric, I write down everything. I can't remember I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning. I can't remember a conversation I had 2 days ago. So I have like my tournament, the event schedule book. I have a calendar in my phone. I have notes all over my desk right now. The biggest thing is just trying not to remember everything so that your mind can be clear to do the day-to-day things, and then you get to the notes when you get to them.
So you're kind of referring to like whether it's a conversation you have with somebody that you have an action item from that, or just something you think of like, oh, I need to make sure I do that. You're just making sure you record it. So
Yeah. Now I'll even like text myself or email myself sometimes if I'm out and I don't have a piece of paper or something.
Yep, definitely. Definitely. Eric or Jake?
Yeah, I think, like Will said, organization, management, keeping all the balls in the air, right? Because that's what they're looking for us to do, is to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. So, like I mentioned before, I write a ton down. I don't keep it on my phone because my staff will tell you I lose my phone about a dozen times a day. So my pockets are full of scrap paper, and I keep a pen on me. And also just, the visual. I don't want members thinking I'm always on my phone. If I pull out a piece of paper and I write something down, they know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not checking a text or responding to an email or scrolling through Instagram. But definitely management, organization, leadership, I think is huge. Because again, you're going from running the plays to calling the plays. So making sure you know how to connect with the staff, what motivates them, and just being available to them, I think is really important. That was one thing that everyone told me going into my first year is you'll be surprised at how much you think about the staff and how much, thought you put into their well-being and what they're doing and their development. So I think that's really important. And lastly, kind of thing no one talks about, but the diplomacy that you need when you take this position, right? As an assistant, somebody comes in upset, you do your best to handle it, but sometimes that gets handed off to, who you're working for, or the department head or the manager. You step into this role and, at some point something's going to go sideways, and you need to answer for it, and you need to answer it the right way, in the right tone, the right manner. So um, I I don't know how you really train for that. I think you just gain that through experience. I was very lucky um, to get to work alongside Carey, who I thought was one of the best, and that might just be the GM side of him. But being able to take that member who comes in and maybe pace of play was bad, maybe their clubs weren't out and ready, maybe a million different things, but being able to address that, calm them down, correct as much as you can, and then follow up is important too. Making sure you either follow up with them, follow up with the staff, knowing that that doesn't happen again, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Jake, anything to add there?
Yeah, organization, and I would also add attention to detail. I think those are I think when you take a role like this and you turn the lights on and it's just you, and you've got to now go build something in a lot of cases, you have to be so good at your policies and procedures, and how are you going to train your staff to answer the phone and all that stuff. The thing that it was never like the our member guest or a pro member or anything like that bothered me, because I feel like I was well prepared taking this role where I could handle that stuff, pretty easily. The thing that like kept me awake at night sometimes is like, if I step off property, which I'm going to have to, what's the experience like? What's the day-to-day experience on a Tuesday afternoon like when I leave? And I would say there were things that I did well, like in that regard, where guys were trained, but there were things that I definitely didn't. And this was a great learning process for me that kind of showed me where I stood. I wasn't as good at attention to detail or as organized as I thought I was. So for anyone that is wanting to become a head golf professional, it's a lot of pressure, and the way to kind of manage that pressure is by being really good in your attention to detail, being really good in your organization, and then being able to dish that off to other people. So as the year went on, I got a lot better with it, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting that, all of you guys kind of highlighted skills that are, really about kind of staying on task, about leading a team, about kind of keeping your golf operation, keep the ship moving in the right direction, right? So I'm kind of curious, which is, I think that's very telling about, what your responsibilities are in a leadership position, in a head golf professional type of position. Curious if you think back to like your PGA training, work where you had the leadership classes and that kind of thing, but you also had other focal areas of the business, the merchandise, the teaching, the events or tournament operations. If you think about kind of those typical duties of a golf professional, those ones I just mentioned, golf car fleet management, is there anything you are spending more or less time on than what you anticipated, or anything that you would say is like kind of key importance for those areas in your operation?
I think all of it, right? Because that's what we're hired to do, is to oversee all of it. There's not one. I think if you lump it into one thing, it's just service, right? Making sure that the staff is bought into what you're trying to do. You're setting clear direction, because the level of service and what we do trickles through all the different kind of facets of the operation. Just trying to take care of every single person that walks through the door, and regardless of what they're coming to use the club for. A lot of our members walk, so they couldn't care less about the cart fleet, but you have a handful of members that care what the carts look like, and some members never play in the tournament ever. But again, you're going to have somebody. So it's just, like I said, it's keeping all the balls in the air. I don't think there's one part of the operation that gets more attention. I think you just have to be good at all of it. And that's the kind of the learning side of it. Is some operations you run certain parts of what you do as a whole, but when you're sitting in this chair, you should know what's going on in every part.
Right.
Yeah, I think when we studied and went through the program, it was very compartmentalized into like, this is cart fleet management, this is tournament operations, this is merchandising. When you're actually in the position, it's just all one job. It's not
Right.
separated. Like Eric said, you have to know all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to do all of it within 10 minutes of each other.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, you better find someone who is good at it, right? And
Right.
hire the help around you.
Get a good assistant.
Yeah, and you're only as good as the team you have. I'm very fortunate to have a great team that definitely saved my tail a few times this year. But
Mhm.
I think that's when you're going through the interview process and you're trying to get these jobs, taking stock of what you're good at and kind of where you need that help is important, because it kind of helps you fill out your staff and shapes how you're gonna kind of lead the operation. So
Mhm.
and what takes the most time for us, merchandising takes a ton of time, and throwing things in Jonas and inventory control, and knowing your value. I could do it. I'm happy to do it. But if I'm sitting behind a desk, that there's no value in that. That's not what the membership brought me here for. So,
Mhm.
bringing in a team that can fill in those spots so I can do what the membership expects of me.
Mhm. Awesome. Good stuff. What do you guys wish you knew going into your first season here? What, if you could go back and tell yourself something, heading into that job, what would it be?
I think for me, it would just be, keep hammering out the details. Make sure that everything is so well explained that there's no room for error. If you start leaving, I had a brand new team, so there's, everybody's learning names. We're learning, what tournaments are, what they cost, all that kind of stuff. So, for us, I think we started getting into a sweet spot when there was no room for error. Not that these guys couldn't, make decisions on their own, because I trusted a lot of them to do that, but giving them, different situations and preparing for multiple outcomes, I felt like really put our team in a much better spot. It's back to that attention to detail and organization. If anyone can take away anything from this specific seminar, if you would like a head professional job, you need to be detail oriented and really good at organization.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, I think I'd go back and tell myself that you don't have to do everything and it's okay to delegate. At my first season, I kind of burnt myself out a little bit towards the end, which is golf season for most golf professionals, but um mistakes are going to happen and there's not a lot of mistakes that can't be fixed. It's okay
Mhm.
as long as they're not repeated.
Yep.
Yeah, I would share that sentiment that Will just talked about. I think it's okay. Like he said, mistakes are going to happen. Um, there's nothing wrong with saying I'm sorry. You don't want to say it too many times, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, a cause line. We're not saving lives. We're not curing cancer, splitting atoms, right? We're here to make sure people have a good time, and that it's okay to delegate, and it's okay to sneak away once in a while, right? You're here. You obviously want to make an impact your first year. You want to make an impact every year, but you especially want to make an impact your first year and being visible. But in this day and age of the elusive work-life balance, it's okay to maybe sneak away and do something for yourself, because you got to stay sharp when you're here.
Mhm.
So I think both what Jake and Will said, attention to detail and just kind of taking it one day at a time.
Mhm. How, you guys have a couple of you have mentioned the stepping away thing and needing that. We all need that, right? But, it's different, right? When you're now in a position of, I think you're not just the one lining up, on the front line anymore. You're the one that's really responsible for it all, for the operation. Kind of, how did did you feel like you were able to jump right in and kind of delegate where you needed to and trust your team? Do you feel like you need to be really hands-on in the beginning and slowly relinquish that control? How do you manage that aspect of your new leadership position?
I wouldn't say I wasn't super hands-on in the beginning. There's my assistant had been here for 6 years at that point. I was just observing everything to kind of get the lay of the land of what worked good. We don't need to touch that. He's doing fine. This could work better a different way. So it was a lot of being involved, but not like super hands-on, a lot of observing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was definitely the opposite of that. I was extremely hands-on, just because we had 4 new professionals that joined our team this year, including myself. So as the season went on, there were definitely windows where I could let somebody else take something, and it was just the situation that I was in where I needed to be a little bit more hands-on through a good chunk of the summer, and then I could back off a little bit because we had figured things out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably a little bit of Goldilocks. I was right in the middle. I wanted the staff, especially coming in, our goal is to push these guys on to their next job or help them develop or just help them advance and grow as a professional or as a person. So I wanted them to get as much ownership of what we do as I could. So, I had really specific, like Jake said, really specific standard operating procedures, that outline from how we open the shop to how we answer the phone to how we receive merchandise. But at the end of the day, if I just wanted to set the direction, and as long as they kind of kept our mission in the forefront of what they do and they got to the result I was looking for, I wasn't all that concerned on how they did it, especially because if it succeeded, they took great pride in what they did, and if it didn't, that's a bigger learning experience. And they're able to have that story to share. So I was hands-on where I needed to be, the things I was going to have to maybe report to the golf committee about, or, in the board meetings, but a lot of the day-to-day, I wanted them to figure it out on their own and form their own kind of way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about for each of you guys, what was the most challenging aspect of your new position and what's been the most rewarding to date?
For me, challenging is I would say it's the assembling the daily procedures and the team. My first day on the job, I am super excited to be here, got all these plans, and I lose the assistant that I thought I was going to have. So that kind of set the tone for maybe my first couple months, where I was like, all right, I really have to, hammer all this stuff out. So that part ended up kind of being the most rewarding as well, where I got to build a team and I got really close with some of these guys because we were spending so much time kind of in the trenches together. I definitely have a appreciation for all the people that worked with me kind of at my call. That's something that I never really thought about much, but it's a lot to get people to buy in and trust you, and it is definitely a very rewarding part of the job.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Challenging. I guess no one really tells you how much time and energy you spend on the staff, and again, worrying about their well-being, because they're the ones making sure the wheels keep spinning. Like I said, we in the leadership role, we set the direction, we put all these policies and procedures in place, but if we don't take care of them, things are going to fall apart. So, and it's that pivoting, you're doing something and then somebody is having a bad day and you can't ignore it. So, now you're having you're trying to have a conversation with them, making sure that they're taken care of. So I guess the challenge was how much energy you spend there with the people you work with, but it's also the most rewarding, like Jake said. Getting to know the staff that I work with, and creating a strong relationship with them. That they're two of them are seasonal, and they we text all the time, we talk all the time. They're excited about things they're doing, and they want us to know up here. So building that bond, that connection with the people we work with and the members, it's a lot of fun.
Mhm. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, getting a relationship with the staff is important. One of the things I noticed, the forming a relationship, especially if you have a board of directors with each board member, and then as well as a new membership, and learning that each person has their own agenda of how they want the club to improve and what they want to see improve first. Learning to, if it's not an immediate problem, if it's like a capital improvement, address it in a board meeting, and try to avoid the one-on-one with the board member, like, hey, we should do this next. Like, kind of not my decision if it's a lot of money, and it's not one guy's decision on the board either. That was kind of a struggle that I saw. But as far as rewarding, seeing the changes that you put in place, starting to see everything work the way you want it to, and people starting to notice that as well, and notice the positive change you're making, that's rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Jumping back to, there was a question in the chat, kind of on our last topic, which was the little bit of like the getting that time away and so forth. Was your work-life balance a topic in your search process, when you were interviewing, and how have you kind of set the expectations with your membership about your days off, or when you're answering emails, texts, phone calls, all that?
Good.
Yeah, so for me, it was definitely, especially since, so at the time I had a 2-year-old. It was very important to kind of address that, and I addressed it not in the first interview, but it was in the full board in-person interview, that I wanted them to be welcome there. Like, if on a Saturday, middle of the day, they're having a rough day and they wanted to come see me, as long as we don't have an event or something like that, that my family's welcome on property pretty much whenever they want. Because as golf professionals, we're used to working 70 hours a week sometimes, and there was days in the summer, and I knew it was going to happen. I would leave before my son was awake, and I'd get home after he's asleep. Like, if they can stop by for lunch and say hi, like, that's very important to me. And then I'm also lucky enough that Sundays I would come in the morning and just kind of check in with the staff for a couple hours, and then take the day off, and that was my family day. Board members knew that if anything happens that day, unless it's an emergency, I'll get to it on Monday. And then in off hours as well, we kind of had the discussion, like, after dinner time, unless it's an emergency, send me an email. It can wait till the next day. I had to answer maybe half a dozen phone calls from our president after dinner time, but it was usually for a good reason. So setting those expectations and making sure there's a mutual agreement is very important before you get 2 years in and try to make a change.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
For me,
go ahead, Jake.
I'm just cutting everybody off. For me, my family was welcome, just like Will's, so my kids could swim in the pool and have lunch with me and stuff, and I think that makes all the difference. I live close enough where I can take a golf cart home sometimes, so I would, for if we had a night event, I would get the event off, drive around, see everybody, and then just kind of take a golf cart home and have dinner and see my kids. I don't think I did a great job. Like, I think I worked a lot more hours than I needed to, looking back at it, but I probably would have gone crazy if I didn't try and have lunch or dinner with my kids at least once a day, if not both of those things. So I think it's really easy. Like, there's so much pressure, I think, in a lot of our jobs. I think it's really easy to get bogged down by the emails and phone calls. So hats off to both of you if you were able to silence that, because I didn't do a great job of that at the beginning. But but as the season went on, it got a little bit easier to push things off to the next day.
Yeah, like they said, just setting expectations. And I kind of did it in a joking manner through the search process. You know, they would ask kind of what, you know, how available are you and things like that, you know, in their own way. And I would just joke, like, I'm going to reply to your email at 4 a.m. or I'm going to reply to it at 11 and midnight. So I'm not going to do it there on the spot. I'd also joke, like, I'm the worst texter ever. If you need to get a hold of me, if it's an emergency, call me. And I may have gotten, like Will said, a handful of phone calls throughout the year. So as far as, you know, the work-life balance goes, I work a lot. I like to work a lot. I'm very fortunate that my family is incredibly supportive of that. Now we have a 7-week-old infant at home, so that's probably going to change. But the my wife understands, has always been very understanding, but also making sure the members know, you know, I don't text. If you need me, give me a call. Emails I'll reply to within 24 hours, but it's not going to be immediate. And then on the same side of it, you know, also explaining, hey, my staff's here to learn. So we run a twilight on a Friday night. I may not stay and do the awards. The staff's got to get used to doing that. They've got to learn how to, you know, close out the event and give the announcements and things like that. So, you know, it helps me sneak away. It helps the staff learn what, you know, to do their job, my job, things like that. Not that I'm just handing things off, but for their development. And just knowing where your value is, right? If I'm not going to miss a one-day member guest, I'm not going to miss the invitational, but a twilight or something like that, you know, it's more important for them to get the experience and sneak away, or I'll go tee it. I'll go play with some members so that they know, hey, I'm not here to just sit in an office or, you know, stand behind a counter. I'm here to be a golf professional and all the things that come with that. So if there's an opportunity, you know, it's a slow afternoon and a group asks me to go play, I'm going to go play and set that standard so that they know that, hey, Eric's on the first tee when he needs to be. He's in the golf shop when he needs to be. He's on the golf course when he needs to be. So I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Another question from our chat for you, gentlemen. I'll read it. In your view, what is the best way today's golf pros can get more people interested in golf to find, hire, and retain employees? In other words, what made you stick with the golf industry? I'm interested in your thoughts as a newer, younger generation of golf professionals to hire, train, and retain the next generation of golf professionals. Any thoughts on that?
I think mentorship and the people that you surround yourself with, and how your staff, or, you know, how the people in the industry view you. You know, the clubs and places I worked at that I was really passionate about is because I worked for someone who was equally as passionate about what we do. And so making sure that the staff knows that you take a professional and personal interest in their well-being and their success is important, because, you know, they're going to work hard not to let you down. And but also making sure that they're able to take care of the things away from the golf course that they want to. So, you know, again, that work-life balance, I'm very lucky that the club here is understanding of that, especially since, you know, we all saw the article come out in Golf Digest. I took that right to the board and said, hey, how are we as a club going to, you know, hit this head on, and making sure we're staffed up and making sure that we're able to give, you know, people time away to spend with their friends and family. And then they come back and, you know, they know that we care about them. So I think that's important, and making sure we're doing what we can to progress their careers, right? And, you know, get them to the next spot, knowing that we're looking out for them. And, you know, I want them to leave better than me at the end of the day. So whether that's connecting them with other professionals throughout the country, making sure, you know, sitting down, I do reviews with everyone twice a year at the beginning of the season, halfway through the season, making sure we're checking off the things that they want to learn, that they want to get better at. And I try to send my staff different places to go meet different people, create a wider network. And I think those types of things keep people engaged and also help recruit when people here, interns especially, hear that you get to work here, but you get to do all sorts of things, not just here, but all in different places. I think it's a strong statement.
Definitely.
I would definitely say that the mentorship thing is so important. You know, I wouldn't be talking in front of you guys today if it wasn't for certain people that I worked with at certain times in my life. I think if that goes kind of not, if there's not a you know, real importance to that, I think it's really hard to motivate anybody to want to work for you and stick with you. You know, something that I'm really proud is that there's a backroom kid that came to me. He's, you know, sophomore in college and wants to get into the industry, so he's going to intern next year. And I think that's really cool. And obviously we did something right to make him really enjoy it that much that he wants to do it again. If you aren't doing that stuff and it's kind of transactional with your employees, it's going to be really, really hard if they feel like they have nothing to work towards.
Yep. Will, anything from you on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think the only thing that I would add would be trying to expose people to the game of golf as early as possible. I always had a passion for golf, but I didn't even think about a position or working as a career in golf until I was like 20. When somebody told me that, you know, that's a possibility. So we try to hire and involve as many of we host a high school golf team. So I have about half of the golf team that works for me, which is a blessing to help find people to work for me, but also to get people and kids involved and know that this is a career path they could take if they choose to.
Okay.
And also just to add on that, explaining to people why what we do is important, right? At the end of the day, it is just golf, but you know, we're trying to make someone's day a little bit better. You don't know what they're coming to the club to get away from. You know, maybe things are tough at work or things are tough at home. And that 16-year-old kid might be sitting in the parking lot grabbing bags just to put gas in his car to, you know, take his girlfriend to the movies. But if you can give that person or every person at the club just a little bit of insight into why we do things, you know, like Jake said, then the employment's not just transactional, it's meaningful. And that's what gets people to stick around or want to join in. Everyone wants to be a part of a winning team too. So doing things the right way definitely helps.
Cool. We're just about to the end of our hour here, but one more question that was in our chat. So hopefully we can get this one answered here still is curious, do each of you block off your calendar from approximately 11 to 2 to catch 80% of the members going out and coming in to be visible? So basically, are you kind of like blocking off times of your day to maintain that visibility, make sure you're in the operation and not back in the office?
One
Yeah,
of the
for
things that I
sure.
do if I have like a meeting or fitting or lesson or something like that, however long that appointment is going to last, I make sure I have the same amount of time open in front of and behind the meeting. So if I have an hour-long lesson, I make sure I'm open an hour before and an hour after. If I just have a half an hour fitting, I'll be half an hour before or after. That way, if somebody comes in, you know, my staff knows he's in a lesson, but he's going to have an hour free after, or he's in a fitting, he'll have half an hour to talk to you. So I try not to block off large sections of my time, at least while I'm at the course. If you're off the course, you're off the course. If you have a meeting somewhere else, but yeah,
Interesting.
you definitely want to have availability. You don't want to block off like 4 hours of your day to have lessons all right in a row when nobody can talk to you if they need you.
Yeah, I don't quite do it that way, but you know, the way I explain it to my staff is, you know, I look at it as like a numbers game. So I can either, you know, 9 o'clock on a Saturday, I can stand on the first tee and talk to 150 people, or I can stand on the lesson tee and talk to one person in an hour. And I want to impact and, you know, touch as many people as I can throughout the day. So I kind of look at those peak hours. I don't necessarily block, you know, a certain amount of time each day, but I definitely am conscious of the busy times and kind of where I need to be. And then the other thing I try to do Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, Thursday afternoons, or I try to do a lot of work on the golf course. So what's nice, you hear about the phones and tablets and things, constantly on call. I kind of flip it on its head and use it as an advantage. So I go to the golf course and I'll reply to emails and return phone calls while I'm out there. But the membership sees me. If I'm on a phone call, I'll tell the person, hey, I'm riding the golf course. If you hear me start a conversation randomly, I'm talking to a member, just, but being visible, I'll go sit on, there's a spot in the golf course. I can see most of the holes. I'll sit there Saturday morning and write thank you notes, and just whenever a group tees off, comes off the green, I stand up, I shake hands, I, laugh and joke. And then those 6 minutes in between groups, I sit back down and knock out a little bit more work. So again, just trying to play the numbers game as much as I can, see as many people throughout the day as I can. And the members know I typically don't reply to emails or correspondence during, from 9 to 5. That's when I trying to talk to as many people on property as I can.
Very good.
So we're a club with no tee times. So I definitely blocked off 11 to 2 on the days that I know people come. Like on a Tuesday, not necessarily we do junior golf, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, absolutely I would spend that. And I would maybe even take it a step further, and I would schedule like when I'm going to do my emails and when I'm going to respond to that. So I've always had trouble with like staying on task. I get scatterbrained pretty easily. So it was really important for me to have that structure that I knew, okay, I've got to get my work done to this point so that I can be available when people come. And that's kind of one of the challenges of being at a no tee time club. So I would block about 11 to 2 every day, and I wouldn't take a lesson. I wouldn't schedule a meeting during that time, and I would just kind of wait around, drive the golf course, do whatever I could to be seen. I would even go to lunch with people at times too, or walk the dining room.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great. Well, I know we're a few minutes past the hour here, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there and answering all those questions. We had a good number come in from the chat, so I'm glad to see that engagement from the group, and clearly, interested in what you guys have to say. So we really appreciate all of your time, our 3 panelists, for joining today and sharing your insights. And I'm sure you'd welcome anyone here to contact you, or if there's assistants out there who want to talk about making that leap from where they are to a head professional position. Hope you guys be willing to be a resource for that, for those guys.
Yeah,
of course.
absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you, and thanks, Erica, for helping put this all together and facilitating everything. And hope everyone has a great afternoon, and we hope to see you on some more of our virtual seminars here over the next few weeks. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.